Hi everyone, Mitch here, and today I'm going to be eating some very spicy noodles while talking about God and determinism and quantum uncertainty and time travel kind of stuff. So let's get into it. These noodles, I just threw away the package, but trust me, they are very spicy. Um, I was thinking about this for a few minutes today, so I'm going to try and rehash what I went over. The thesis of what I'm saying, the starting point of this is that Schrodinger. Wait, no. Yeah, okay. Give me just a second. Let me eat some noodles. It is hot. This is the pink Mountain Dew, by the way, the raspberry lemonade stuff. It's pretty good. I recommend it. Better than the watermelon, just by a little bit sometimes. I'd tie it with apple. No, it's better than apple. Maybe a little worse. Who knows, really? What is anything? Okay, so quantum uncertainty. This is the idea. You've probably heard of Schrodinger's cat. I've heard of Schrodinger's cat so many times, and every single time I hear of it, it's explained different. Even when I'm like rewatching a video that explains it, they explain it a different way every time. I swear. Some kind of Mandela effect. But the basic gist of Schrodinger's cat is that there's a cat in a box, and you don't know whether the cat is alive or dead until you open the box, and it's equally probable that it's alive as that it's dead. But when you open the box, you know for sure. Maybe opening the box kills the cat. Maybe the opening the box just solidifies whichever possibility you didn't know about. Maybe we can think of some mechanism to leverage the actual principle that's being illustrated by the allegory of the cat in the box, which is that when particles behave certain ways, subatomic particles do things, we're not sure, we can't know everything about how it's doing that, and the idea is that the universe just kind of picks at random when it's observed, which is very weird. So there's an uncertainty there. There's an element of non-determinism. We can't say for certain, for sure, what the solution, what the path of the particle is going to be, what the interaction is going to result in, whether the cat is alive. Let's talk about determinism, though. So determinism is the idea that everything causes everything else in a mathematically predictable way. Essentially that, like, if you go to the extreme, it's that free will doesn't exist or like is an illusion. Like we can imagine the idea of free will because we were determined to, and it's the chemical interactions in our brain that are causing us to do that, and uh, despite all of that, it's just kind of happening. And like, why are you thinking about that? Because it was caused by me saying it. Why did I say that? Because it was caused by other things bumping around in my brain. Those things were all started by other things, and you could follow that back all the way to the Big Bang, as the idea. That all things that happen have material causes. Maybe you could say that the Big Bang is the exception and the sole cause. Maybe you could say that God caused the Big Bang. I think that's fine. It doesn't really matter. Either way, that's determinism. Everything happens according to the rigid laws of science and everything that arises from it. Now, importantly, when I talk about determinism, I'm not talking about materialism. I don't think that the existence of God or non-existence of God, one way or the other, would say anything about determinism. God, the way that God interacts with the rules that he creates could very well be such that um, that being God of a deterministic universe and working miracles, the miracles could also be deterministic. Maybe maybe that's deism, Patrick. Maybe God set the rock up so that it would have water in it, so that when Moses struck the rock, the water would pour out. In fact, if you look at the rocks of the time, there's decent evidence that that could have been what the whole striking the rock thing was about. Um, like there are lots of miracles or things that were thought to be miracles that have been quote unquote debunked. That doesn't mean the miracle isn't significant or that it's not true. You know, God works in mysterious ways. I don't think that physical explanations to miracles actually negate the miracle. That's not what I came here to talk about. What I came here to talk about was, this is spicy, I swear. I'm just not reacting to it for some reason. What I came to talk about is free will. Now, free will is very briefly the idea that when a rational agent, when a person decides to do something, they are actually making a decision. There is a legitimate possibility of timelines branching out where they could do either thing, and they choose the one. And that is the thing they chose, and that's free will. Free will is pretty straightforward. Everyone kind of thinks they have free will. It's very difficult to live without believing you have free will on some level. We like free will. We want to preserve free will. If we hold a worldview that would seem to contradict free will, we will try and find a cope. Now, determinism, having a deterministic worldview, whether that be pure materialism or deism or something else, that also would seem to contradict free will, which we don't like. And it seems like in order to say, oh, free will, I don't want to not have free will. I don't want to believe I don't have free will, so I'm not going to believe in cause and effect determinism. I'm going to believe in something else where cause and effect don't actually affect minds as such. And this, I think, is a little bit fraught because we haven't figured out quite what a mind even is. But we know that our minds can be changed by, for example, chemicals. Chemicals produced by our bodies, chemicals added to our bodies. You know, anybody who's ever been on any kind of drug can tell you that, like, it changes your mind while you're on it and possibly later, depending. I assume. I haven't done much of that at all. But yeah. Just a second. Anyway, I don't think we need that, though, because free will just means that you believe that you're making the choice for yourself. And you don't know all of the factors that would go into you making whatever choice you make. Therefore, you, by making that choice, are exercising free will. Even though you were informed by things, you can't really know all of that stuff between the Big Bang and you making a decision. So it's still pretty much like you're just deciding. Like, there are factors that would influence that, but if anything were different, it's the butterfly effect. If anything had been different, you could have made a completely different decision. You could be in a totally different place right now, in any direction. And so, I don't think it's useful to say that we can't have free will. We can't believe to have free will. We can't have practical free will with determinism, because we can't. Practical free will is just believing you have free will, living as if you have free will, and getting along with your life with free will. You can have free will. It's fine. And you do. But what about God and free will? This is something that also comes up. Uh, it's like a ninth grade theology class question. Like, if God is outside of time and God is omniscient, that means God can zoom in on any frame of time in the history or future of the universe, and he can see what you're doing. But doesn't that mean, they ask, that you can't have free will then, because God already knows what you're going to do? If God already knows what you're going to do, how can you do it freely? And my solution would be that God, when God is, like, God isn't going to tell you, right? Probably not. I mean, there's prophecies, maybe, arguably. But the vast majority of the time, God is not going to tell you what future you will do or what decision present you is about to make, thus preserving causality. Thus, we can have determinism and free will and God being outside of time and omniscient, and it's fine. It basically still holds up. Like, if we were to derive everything, if we were to simulate the universe the exact same way, in a way that's faster than the universe itself, which is probably impossible, but if we did that, hypothetically, we could predict the future just by watching it happen, just by simulating ourselves faster. But would we tell the people in the simulation that it's what they're going to do? No, they would be telling us what we're going to do. Maybe us telling the people in the simulation what they're going to do would be that, like, if we were to rewind the simulation and tell them what happens in the future of the simulation, that would be a similar thing to God telling you what you're going to do tomorrow. We don't do that. A, because the simulation isn't complete enough, but anyway. Still understand that to a player within the simulation, their decisions are free. Even with determinism. And this was fine up through the 1800s. And then we got quantum theory. We got what was the word? We got uncertainty. You can have two identical things playing out, and one of them will go one way and the other will go the other way. You don't know anymore. Is the cat alive? Does the cat live, or does the cat die? It's just randomly chosen somehow. Maybe our minds work the same way. maybe it's not, maybe we don't have to rely on this kind of practical free will. We can have actual, genuine free will once again. Maybe there's some metaphysical force in your mind that manipulates the quantum state of your brain into the decisions that you, the mind, want to make. There's probably, if that's the case, I mean, there's definitely still stuff happening both ways there. But, like, we could envision some kind of a system where quantum uncertainty is controlled by spiritual forces. And in that case, we have real free will again. And that's a little bit refreshing, but it's also a little bit miserable. Because it could just as easily be that there's no spiritual forces controlling the quantum state of your brain, and there's a ton of tiny interactions in there that are just randomized. If those interactions are indeed randomized, which it seems like they are from observation, again, we can't know if they weren't randomized, because the patterns would look random to us because we don't know the end that they're aiming towards. But if they are in fact just random, that's almost worse than determinism, right? Like, you used to be able to say, okay, so we don't have, our wills aren't truly free, but we don't know what causes them, but we know there is some cause. Well, now we don't even know what the cause is, because there are practically infinite random events that happened sometime in the lifespan of the universe that caused your mind to be the state that it's in, and there's even more random interactions happening inside your brain that will also change that. This is like where do we go from here? But also, at this point, we run into kind of a weird case. So, if God is outside of time and God is omniscient, he can observe at any level of detail, at any point in time, the state of the universe at any point in space, right? That's omniscience right there, being outside of time. Omniscient, omnitemporal. So in that case, God can tell whether the cat is alive or dead. God can just zoom in through the box. He's in spectator mode, right? That's fine. He can pause and play in reverse. He can look at all the frames in a grid or whatever. However you want to visualize an incomprehensible being comprehending things that we cannot. So if God, just a second, I don't want to just say words here. I guess what I'm trying to say is these interactions with observation, a being that can observe anything and hold it in the context of anything else. Like, does God break quantum mechanics? Do quantum mechanics break God? I don't think so, because at any moment in time, God can observe that moment as a snapshot, and he can string them together. And so he can observe like, he can derive, I guess for him, all math is trivial, so any observation and derivation would be the same. Um, but, like, okay, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, you can't tell the location and the position at the same time of a particle. You can only have one or the other, and in finding one, you lose the other. But God can have them both, because he's God, or because he has the ability to just scrub through the timeline of time. He can observe both the velocity and the position. Or maybe I'm not thinking about this right. I only have a high school level of understanding of this topic. Ultimately, though, and here's the part that I think is a shame. God isn't just going to tell you what the velocity and the location of a particle are at the same time. Like, the fact that God knows doesn't matter practically. If there's a solution to Heisenberg uncertainty, to Schrodinger's cat, God isn't going to give us it even though he knows. In the same way that a lack of prophecy prevents free will, or allows for free will, in a deterministic world, God's knowing what happens with quantum uncertainty doesn't make it determinism again, in the same way that it doesn't take away our free will, that he knows what's going to happen. And I just thought that was kind of a weird dichotomy of all of the different ways that you can think about this. Maybe your conclusion is different from mine. I wasn't sure what my conclusion was going to be going into this. I just thought it was a super interesting problem. And I have this many noodles left. Bye.